Hey everybody, this is ShadowQ, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Solar Flare patch notes. Um, and the changes I want to go over are basically balance changes to the game instead of new content, because I really would just want to review like how effective these are going to be in the upcoming patch. So we're going to start with Mail of Renewal. They decrease the passive healing from 20 to 15% of your maximum health and mana. Now this item was recently buffed an insane amount in a previous patch, and I think they're meeting in the middle of where it was before, which is a really good change. As it stands now, it's an insanely overpowered item. It's gotten on just about every single character, and bringing it from 20 to 15% is a step in the right direction, but I think this item will still be like a top tier item by a lot. This nerf will not cause people to not buy it anymore. You'll still get it in the exact same scenarios. It's not enough of a nerf in my opinion, but this is definitely a good start. The next item that they changed was Bluestone Pendant. They reduced the additional damage from 30 seconds to 26 seconds, sorry, from 30 damage to 26 damage over 2 seconds, for a basically total of 8 damage nerf down from sorry, not 8, 4 damage nerf, and then that's it. The overtime part doesn't really matter whatsoever, but this is a good change. This item is insanely overpowered, and this is probably one of the smallest changes they've done ever. Like, this will not affect this item in any way. People that make use out of the item will see the exact same effects of it. This is like an insanely small nerf. I think this item is insanely overpowered. Basically, my thoughts on this when it came out were that it's too strong because it gives 20 physical power for the same cost as Death's Toll, and the passive is arguably better unless you only have like one ability that can proc it. So Bluestone is just mathematically inflated in everything. So, well, like in a lot of cases, you would actually buy Bluestone Pendant if it had zero passive. I mean, those are like niche cases and stuff, but I think this is a definitely not big enough nerf for this item. Step in the right direction, I guess, but it's like tickling it, right? It's doing nothing. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Choose a Focus now provides 250 mana. I actually very much like the design of this change by a lot. If you have CDR, you're going to be using more moves, and you shouldn't really be punished for having a CDR. You should actually get mana to compensate. I agree with this design perspective a ton. It's just really smart. Like, if you're using more moves because of the CDR that you have, you kind of should just have mana to compensate, because that makes the game flow more solidly and makes you feel not like you can't use your moves with the cooldown reduction that you have because you need to save mana. I love this change. This is extremely smart by Hi-Rez to do. It's just good. Now what they did do though, however, is change Shoes of the Magi at the same time. They got rid of the mana on this one. Honestly, like, it doesn't really matter if these did or didn't have mana. They're pretty much fine with or without it. But they gave it some more magic power to compensate, which I think is completely fair. The Pen Boots will still be insane. It's not like you won't buy them anymore. You didn't buy them for the mana. Design-wise, I think it's okay to take away the mana. There's a whole other issue with like whether or not you have enough mana or not, but like giving the mana to CDR boots instead of Pen Boots is really, really good. I like that. I like that from a design perspective a lot. So those are all the items that they changed. So now we're going to move on to God changes. The first god that they changed is Apollo's 3. They changed the knockback. This is Dash, by the way, in case you don't know. They increased the knockback strength from 175 to 250. I believe they previously actually nerfed this back when Apollo was like first pick, first ban material, and now he's not really seeing as much play. So I guess they just decided to put him back to the spot that he was a while ago. So I think it's in an okay spot now. Apollo didn't really need a buff, but this is also an extremely small buff. So I think this is a pretty fair change. I don't think it really does anything, and it doesn't really make too much sense to me why they did it. But I mean, it's just kind of like arbitrary to me. I have no strong feelings on this one, I guess. Next is a Willix. Her Gravity Surge. This is actually one of the biggest changes they did. Previously, one of a Willix's weaknesses was somebody would go next to a wall, then jump, and there would literally be like 1 frame or 0 frames where like you could actually ult the person, because when they were over a wall, they were considered LOS of you, so the ult didn't pull. Now this change is actually ridiculously huge. So let me explain. Like, let's say you're chasing somebody near the mid harpies, and they're about to jump over the wall. Now you can actually punish them for, you know, getting like jumping. Like, you can actually use a Willix's kick, whereas you couldn't before. That's huge. But there's also another aspect of this which I think is really cool. Now when you're like Geb or Sylvanas or I don't know, an arbitrary like Vulcan or something that has a knock-up, your Willox can actually be standing like over the wall, and you can knock somebody up, and then they can get pulled over the wall from a Willox. Like that's really cool. Like nobody would expect like an alt like that. That's really cool. I really want to see that. So Wilkes wasn't seeing like too much play. She was picked here and there, but I think this is a good change for at least quality of life, and it creates those really cool scenarios. So this might need some toning down. Like they might have to actually have some compensatory nerfs somewhere else in her kit, like maybe the damage on one of her moves or something. But I love this change, man. That creates so many cool scenarios, and it makes her feel fun and fluid to play. I agree with this change completely. Whether or not she needs balancing after this is up in the air, but I like this change from a design perspective. It's really, really cool. Okay, so Cabrakan. Reduce cooldown on his 2 from 14 scaling to 10 to just 10 at all ranks. Honestly, this shouldn't really change anything that much. I think he just maxed his shield regardless, but it's a small buff. Cabrakan wasn't really seeing any play whatsoever, so buffing characters that aren't seeing play, just like minorly, is a really good idea. Like it, small changes like this that sometimes actually do make the difference between viability and not. This one is a bit too small to make any difference in my opinion, but I like the direction that they thought for that. I just think this is too small to really matter though, unfortunately. Moving on to Chalk's Rain Dance, the slow is increased from 5% to scaling to 25 from 20 to 40. So basically just 15% more slow at all ranks. I think this is really good. Chalk has fallen off a lot in the meta, like, for a long time, and part of his, like, ability to hit people was, like, well, like, right now, Chalk is all of his 1. Like, all of his damage comes from, like, his 1, and that's it. And his Rain Dance actually, with this amount of slow, will actually let him stick on people and damage them. So he actually has more in his kit than throw his axe, run away, do nothing. So I agree with this change from a design perspective. I think having a bruiser being able to stick on somebody like that is necessary for a god like Chalk who doesn't really have much else in his kit to like stick, because it feels like he just kind of threw something out there and then did nothing for a long time. So I agree with this change a lot. I think it's really, really good. I think it's a smart way to buff him as well instead of just giving him absurd numbers. Like, if they buff the damage on either of his, like, 2 or his 1, it wouldn't make sense. It would just be like, well, that's even more if all his kit, then he just does that move and that's it. So this actually gives him more active gameplay, which I like a lot. It makes more sense, honestly. So I like this change. And it almost actually might be enough to make him see more play. It's really hard to tell. I think the top solo laners right now will still be top, but he might be considered to be picked now. Like he's not like, I don't know. It's a pretty important change, but it's not game changing. So let's move on to Hebo, Atlas of the Yellow River. Hebro and his allies are now immune to slow effects while in the river. This is really huge. Before, like, Hebo didn't really see play because you could kind of just... Hebo had to kind of be in melee range to do damage, and that really gets punished by any sort of assassin. And right now there are so many strong assassins and stuff like that, or just like a bruiser with CC that is. Like, Hebo had just a hard time, at least in the meta, and now he might be able to get away with being in more. So regardless of whether his allies are slow immune, him being slow immune is huge because it lets him actually push in to be like less punished. Like, for example, if you have a Sun Wukong on you, being able to use your 2 to actually get away from his 2 and his Tiger afterwards so it can't stun you is like a ridiculously huge change. Whether or not this will make him see play is in the air, but maybe like in niche scenarios against like an Osiris, he'll be able to kite him easier if he goes on him in the back, which means he's like a less punishing pick to pick Hebo. So I like this from a design perspective, I think. It's pretty cool. I don't think he'll still see much play afterwards, but maybe some team can figure out a niche spot for him now. Next is Hu Yi. The thing they wrote here is Hu Yi's a hunter who lacks a hard steroid, and basically all of his kit was his Ricochet, which is true. So they buffed the Ricochet, which I think is weird. I think Hu Yi was actually in an okay spot, but I guess it's a minor buff. They also buffed the scaling on his dive bomb. I think these changes are just really small. I'm thinking about it a little bit more now. The Ricochet being on a 10-second cooldown could actually be ridiculous. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this one. Like, it's not like Hu Yi was bad before, but being able to Ricochet, like, twice in a really small area could actually be crazy. He'll get that much more, like, stuns on his target, which is probably really important. It also is less punishing to go for like the YOLO bounces sometimes. I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit torn on this one. I'm not sure if might have been too much of a buff almost. I guess not. He wasn't really OP or underpowered before. It's a cool change. Maybe we'll see more YOLO bounces in competitive because, like, he's punished a little bit less for using his cooldown. So that's interesting. I don't think this will change his viability all that much. It's really cool that he can get multiple stuns off on his target, though. Okay, we'll move on. I'm kind of torn on this change. Sorry, guys. But moving on to Mercury. Fastest God alive, maximum damage bonus for distance traveled from 50 to 75, and special delivery, throw height to 300 to 350. These changes are very, very small. A lot of the time you don't even get, like... Fastest God alive, I believe, is his passive, which means he gains more damage the longer he travels. So the max damage increase is increased to 75% now, I think. Special delivery, throw height increased to 350. Now, for the passive for Fastest God Alive, this is just a small damage buff. Mercury's not really seeing any play, so I agree with buffing his damage in just a small way. He's not really like broken in his kit otherwise, so I like the change a lot. For special delivery though, that's really interesting because if the throw height is increased, it might mean that you can get like one extra auto attack on your target as he's landing. I don't know how this will work, but if he actually is able to get more value out of like his 3, like getting free auto attacks in the air because even just a little bit higher, that's huge. So this change has the potential to be like absolutely nothing on the special delivery or like really huge. It really depends on like how many extra auto attacks he's able to get off while he has his target thrown up in the air, which is interesting. It also means Merc is way stronger when like he's near a wall, just get constant autos before they even land. That's pretty cool. This has the potential to be a very volatile change. Moving on to Nemesis, the cooldown over shields reduced from 18 to 16. I guess, sure, why not? Nemesis wasn't really seeing a lot of play, so I guess a minor buff is fair. This is the direction they've actually gone in a couple different times this patch. I think that's a really good philosophy to have. People that aren't seeing play do kind of deserve minor buffs like that. It's really smart because if you overbuff somebody, it'll be like, welp, they're top tier now, oops, we didn't mean to do that, but here it is. So minor buffs like just reducing the shield cooldown from 18 to 16 might see them see more niche play in like some small circumstances, so I think it's incredibly smart the way Hi-Rez is balancing like their underpowered-ish gods right now, like Nemesis like this. These changes might be a tad too small, but I think at the risk of making them too strong, I like these changes a lot. I support them completely, even though they might seem small. So, again, still a really small change. Won't really see her change in viability, but maybe in a niche scenario it'll help. So, that's about it. Nox, this ability now cripples. Her 1 now cripples in addition to roots. And it looks like there's a kind of bug fix on the also. We'll focus on the Shadow Lock. This is actually really a strange thing to do. I think this is more to make her a little bit more consistent. Because what would wind up happening is, you do your 2, and then you either are able to get your 1 off in the 2, and they're effectively crippled regardless, because they're silent so they can't use a move, including dashes, or you get your 2, and then you get your 1 after they walk out of it because you missed it a little bit. So I think adding the cripple to it just makes her a little bit more consistent, and it punishes you less for missing your 2-to-1 combo, which I like a lot. I don't think it makes her overpowered, I don't think it'll make her top tier worthy, but it means that you aren't like, oh, I either get off half of their health in a combo or like literally 0, so now like she can actually get her 1 damage off and not be too worried. Some people think that this is a bit too strong, but like having your 1 channel damage like for free sometimes isn't really a big deal. It just is a little bit more consistent, and I think that's what Nox needs right now. Because she's kind of like, 2-1 if I get it, great. If not, well, I'm a useless. So being able to actually do your 1 and have it do something is important. I like this change a lot. Sobek actually got pretty huge changes. For a while, Sobek's mana costs were, I believe, simply outdated, so they reduced the mana cost of the 1 scaling down to 90 at the end, the 3 scaling down to 80 at the end, and that's just really smart. The mana cost changes were necessary, I think. Sobek's mana costs were just really, really high for basically no reason whatsoever. The only compensatory thing that Sobek had was lurking in the water to regen some mana, but it wasn't really enough to make up for the fact that all of his spells cost so much. So this is not only like a quality of life change, but balance-wise, this is actually huge. Sobek's mana was a huge issue before. This means that he might be able to get off another round of moves in a single kit. And one of Sobek's biggest problems was like his mana. And regardless of like whether you needed the balance, this is a huge quality of life change. Also, it's a smart change for Iris to do. This is probably way overdue. So lurking in the waters, this is actually a huge change. Sobek now increases his procs by 30% while submerged, and the slow is increased to like 5% more than it was before. The slow change is honestly basically irrelevant, kind of nice though. But his procs while submerged, that's pretty important. I like the direction of this kind of because it is less like rewarding for building magic damage, and it like makes you build prot to get effectiveness out of it. So like if he was going to be good as a like magical soul laner, it's like a little bit less effective now because you get more from building prots instead of just going like at least half damagey. But at the same time, I don't know if this is necessary. Sobek might actually be really strong now. Um, he still has the same issues that he had before. I believe Cloud9 actually did pick him a lot at the recent COG but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. This could be a really volatile change. I don't necessarily agree with the numbers on this one. I think the prots increased are maybe a little bit too much since, like, he's CC immune. Like, you can kind of just dodge everything in the water anyway. I don't know. It's a really arbitrary change, kind of. But I love the mana cost reduction, and that might actually make him see a little bit more play, which is interesting. Next, we have Tyr. Change stance, increase defense stance prots by 2, like per rank basically, and decrease cooldown by 1 second. I think the decreased cooldown is fair. I don't think that really matters too much, but I'm actually not a fan of him having that many prots on his 3. Back when he saw a lot of play, the most annoying thing about Tyr was that when he was in blue stance, he was like beyond invincible, and without him having to build like anything, it was just kind of stupid. So I don't agree with somebody having like that level of insane prots just passively. It just makes it not really fun to play against, and just kind of like when you're at the point where you don't feel like it's worth using your mage's mana to burn somebody just because they are so tanky, it's kind of like it just doesn't feel fun to play against, and I don't really like how they change passive prots just like that. So I'm kind of against this change, but at the end of the day, this is a 2 scaling to 10 prot change, so it's not really going to change too much, but if Tier C's play again, you're going to be like, why is this defense stance so tanky, man? I really don't want to play against that. Moving on to Vulcan, just a bug fix, I believe. Shing 10, he has not been seen in ranked or SPL yet because he's been auto-banned, but Whirlwind and of Rage and Steel, I believe that's his ult, I think. The cooldown used to scale down to 80 seconds, now it's just 100 seconds at all ranks, which is a little bit weird because other ults are 90. It would have made sense to me for them to just keep it at 90, but I guess it's just a strong ult or something. I don't know. When I played Shing 10, it seems like his ult has such a long wind-up time that it's good, but it's not like super OP or anything like that. I think it's really weird that it's seen as like a more powerful cooldown because of it being at 100 seconds, but I feel like that might have been necessary because of his strength as like a soul laner, but as a support, the 100 seconds seems a bit off. And I actually like reduced magic power scaling on like Guardians because I think Guardians have potential to be just like insanely strong in non-support roles, and I don't like that too much. Well, I like the ability of it, but I don't like when they're too strong in it. Like there have been metas before where it's just been like triple Guardian and no one's really killable, and the game feels really awkward. So I really like Guardians not having extra scaling on their moves because it means that they can't just like be invincible and deal damage. So I like reducing magic power scaling in general on Guardians. I think that's smart. Finally, the last change that we have is Zhong Kui. The last part is cut off, but I'll read it. Base health increased from 400 to 450, and then increased health per level by 10 per level. And finally, the one that you can't see is increased magic prot per level from 0 to 0.9. I believe this is one of the only mages that have magic prot per level, I think, which is really interesting, because he's like more of a tanky mage. And the thing about giving health to Zhong Kui passively is it's not just like a tanky buff for him, but because of his passive, it gives him so much prots. The amount of health that he's like getting per point of health is effectively increased because of the prots. Like it's actually a huge change to give him like another you know 250 health at max level because that's also affected by the bonus prots that he has in his ult. So that's a really huge change. I think this will actually let Zhongxi play. Um, the magic prot per level is also semi-important, but not quite. Like Zhong was almost viable before. I think he might be a niche mid pick now. He could at least be considered. Maybe against like Bellona jungle, you could just cancel her bludgeon or something like that. I don't know. I think it's a really good change. He wasn't really, considered to be strong at the moment, so I like the changes. Thank you guys for watching. That's about it.